One of the most controversial topics in nutrition is dairy. And so, on one hand, it's the big question of should humans even be drinking or eating the milk of another mammal? On the other hand, it's the big discussion of wait a second, this is some of the most nutritious, no, most nutrient dense products that we have, and might it be actually helping humans to evolve better and more healthfully? And then, of course, there's a lot of gray area, and that is what I enjoy making YouTube videos about, to help you realize that for most things in nutrition, it's not black and white. And I feel fortunate that I have enough nutrition education, 7 years of schooling in nutrition science, being in the field for over a decade, to be able to properly break down some of these super controversial topics so that you can better understand what is best for you. So I'm Ashley Oswald. I'm the owner of Oswald Digestive Clinic, where we help people improve and eliminate bothersome gut issues like gas, bloat, diarrhea, constipation, abdominal pain, and more. And if you or somebody you know wants to work with our clinic, you can just schedule a free call below and go from there. Also, at the end, I'm going to be sharing some great brands of yogurt, both dairy, quality dairy, and non-dairy, and that's one of the most common questions that we get. People really want brand ideas, because I'm sure you've been to the yogurt aisle lately and it's super overwhelming, and so this should really help you save some time. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So some of this confusion about dairy will stem from the fact that dairy is one of the most common food sensitivities, food allergies, food intolerances. And then there's also a difference between dairy products on the market that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Raw dairy has more enzymes to help break down some of the ingredients in dairy products. It has probiotics, it has prebiotics, so there's a whole debate, raw versus not raw. But then that debate will go beyond just the surface, because it can then start to go into the farming and what is the safety of the farms that this dairy is coming out of. You know, drinking raw dairy from just any farm is really, really not smart, but there are other farms where it's actually a lot safer than you might think or have been told by the media. And so really, I want you to think about this before we dive into the topic further, because you might already have some preconceived ideas of nobody should ever have dairy, or like everybody should be having dairy. So really try to open your mind beyond that as we have this discussion. Because first of all, if you're in a area where you see a starving child and you have dairy, are you really gonna not give that child the dairy because you think it's gonna hurt them? No, that dairy would be incredible for that child that's malnourished, if you don't have anything else. And then on the other side of it, if you have a kiddo suffering from eczema and acne, would I encourage that kid to drink milk at every meal? No, we're going to find an alternative to the dairy for those kiddos, because they're probably having some sort of an autoimmune reaction. And since dairy can be a big contributor to autoimmune issues, because again, it's one of the most common food sensitivities, intolerances, allergies, we're going to trial an elimination of it, and it's probably not going to be appropriate for those kiddos. So there's so many different situations where it could or couldn't be appropriate. So to start thinking about whether dairy is or isn't right for you, we first very basically want to lean into intuitive eating, and that means, how do you feel after you eat dairy? Do you notice that your autoimmune symptoms worsen? Do you have joint aches and pains? And when you have ice cream, do you notice they get worse? Do you notice your skin rashes get worse? Do you notice that your gut issues get worse? You get more bloated and you get pain? Do you know that you have a lactose intolerance? And if so, maybe certain dairy products you don't tolerate, but others you do, because the higher fat dairy products are lower in lactose. Some of the like hard cheeses, or just, you know, Kerrygold grass-fed butter you can probably tolerate, but with lactose intolerance, you probably won't be able to tolerate most yogurts, for example. Do you have an allergy to dairy? Then certainly that IgE response, you're just gonna want to cut it out because, of course, your body is gonna have a pretty instant reaction to it in that case. Or do you have a food sensitivity? And food sensitivities can be a bit harder to figure out because there can be delayed reactions. And so if we're trying to figure out if somebody has a food sensitivity to dairy, that's where elimination and reintroduction protocols come in, because somebody could eat dairy 3 days ago and first start getting symptoms from it today. So the half-life of the food sensitivity is about 21 days. Typically takes 2 to 3 half-lives to get out of the body, and that's how we come to what most food eliminations recommend, where you're doing at least a 4-week cutting it out, elimination, and then reintroduction. Usually, if you want to be super, super safe, it'd be 3 months, but most people can start to notice symptom changes within 4 to 6 weeks. And then lastly, we do have some lab testing that could help to figure this out. It's called mediator release testing. It's the only food sensitivity test that I would recommend, and it's checking to see how many mediators are released from your white blood cells in response to different foods. And then basically upon the end of that testing, you're going to get a whole chart of the lowest reactant foods to the highest reactant, and you're going to do the elimination based upon just eating your lowest reactant green foods. And the benefit of doing this sort of food sensitivity testing is that then you know exactly what your cells are reacting to, because with food sensitivities, everybody's so different. Even some of the foods that you would think are very anti-inflammatory for everybody, like turmeric, some people will actually have a reaction to, and it could be inflammatory for them. And so those are some considerations when talking about whether you tolerate dairy or not. So then to take it a layer deeper, there are different types of dairy products. So we have A1 and A2 proteins. And so A1 proteins are going to be the ones that are mostly on the market right now from typically Holstein cows, and it's from breeding cows over like hundreds of years. And what we suspect from the research we have so far and from case report is that more people will react to this type of protein in the dairy than the older variety of protein in the dairy, the A2. And so that comes more from the sheep, goats, and then the older variety of cattle, such as Guernsey or Brown Swift. And it's just suspected from what we know so far that the body just tolerates this form of the protein. It's slightly different amino acid sequence in the protein better than the A1. And to make this more understandable, what that means in real life is that if you find that you're not tolerating dairy and you do that elimination reintroduction and you're like, nope, I definitely get a reaction to it, you could try sheep or goat dairy, like raw fermented sheep cheese or something of that sort, and you might notice that you don't get the same negative effects from it for this reason. So most of the research on this is coming out of Australia and New Zealand, and then in the United States, for perspective, about 90% of the dairy is A1. So if you want to try out A2, you just have to look a little bit harder for it, but most like co-ops or natural food stores will have A2 products. And it's being labeled a lot better now too, because this information is being more understood by consumers and people are looking for it now. So then the next layer we have on this is not only where and what animal the dairy is coming from, but it's also the product that's being made. And when you go to the yogurt aisle, you see all these yogurts, and honestly, most of them have a bunch of added sugars to them. They have often added fake colorings and things you're just going to want to limit and avoid. So some yogurt containers, just a simple container like this, has more than the recommended amount of added sugars in a day. So you should be keeping under 25 grams of added sugar in a day. So when you're looking at your yogurt products, look at that line on the nutrition facts that says added sugar, see how many grams that is, and see how it compares to 25 grams a day. How I like to do it and what I suggest when you're looking at yogurt is actually looking at the ingredients. It's going to be easier to navigate and just see if they add sugar. Is sugar in the ingredients? Remember, sugar can come by many different names. We have a whole section in our course about that if you want more information. But look and see, is it simply the milk product with maybe some other more benign ingredients, or are they adding a bunch of different sugars to it? And then lastly, for yogurt, you want to make sure there's enough protein in it so that it's actually filling. So look for something that has at least 5 grams of protein per serving. So now let's talk about brands. When thinking dairy, I always like to encourage people to buy grass-fed because cows are meant to be eating grass. And so if you're getting dairy that's grass-fed, it's also going to have a slightly better nutrient profile, a bit more of those omega-3s, those anti-inflammatory oils that typically omega-3s are thought of as fish, right? Like skipjack tunas and sardines and things are really high in those omega-3s for brain health, other benefits. Also, when you're buying things like dairy, you could get slightly more of that from the grass-fed. And I like to also think of it from an animal welfare standpoint. I'd much rather buy from a farm where the cattle are left to be outside and not jammed into pens, but that might just be me. So some brand that you'll want to pay attention to, I'll share with you first the dairy brands, and I'll share with you non-dairy brands, because if you find that dairy just isn't for you, you can check out some of these brands that are good quality. So the dairy brands include Maple Hill Creamery, which is from grass-fed cows. And then Nancy's Yogurt, which has from grass-fed cows, and they have non-dairy options. And then there's also Redwood Farms, and they have yogurt with the A2 from goat. So then non-dairy yogurt, and I have a whole list that I usually share that I'll just read off here. The first one is Forager Cashew Yogurt. That's my favorite. It's pretty easy to find now in natural food stores. Then there's also Culina yogurt, which is like coconut yogurt. Another dietitian told me that's her absolute favorite. There's Koyo yogurt. They're so delicious. Just look for the unsweetened because, again, can be a lot of added sugars to it. You can do the unsweetened and just add your own berries or a little bit of your own honey. Lava yogurt, Lavva yogurt, Anita's, and then you could also do homemade yogurt where you're doing full fat coconut milk. You can open up a probiotic capsule, put it in there, and you can put it at a low heat in the oven and let it ferment itself, and then add some sort of a thickener like an arrowroot powder to it and make a big batch of homemade yogurt. If you use an Instapot, there's even a setting on some Instapots to make homemade yogurt, which is kind of fun. And then the best place to find some of these yogurts is going to be at a like Whole Foods, a co-op, a natural food store. You'll notice that the yogurt section is actually a bit less overwhelming because they already helped with sifting out some of the really bad brands that have a lot of fake colorings and additives. And so I hope this video is helpful for you. Let me know in the comments if you do or don't tolerate dairy. And then if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of our new videos every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next week, Tuesday.